everyone, welcome to the Living Room channel. Today I have a special guest with me called Ramya, and we connected via LinkedIn because we are like fellow recruiters. And I had a chat with her just for this episode, and she is just amazing. And what she wants to do for the women out there is, I think, is so inspiring. And so I just want her to share some of the insights as well at this show. So welcome to the show, Ramya.
Thank you, Shivon, for the very lovely introduction. Yeah, I'm Ramya here. I'm actually a Singaporean who's currently living in Melbourne. I moved here in September last year. So yeah, and as you mentioned, I'm in my professional background. I was in recruitment and executive search for more than 8 years. So yeah, I think throughout my career in recruitment, I was actually responsible for hiring like mid to senior level professionals. And when I moved to Melbourne, I knew at the back of my mind that I wanted to do something that creates a meaningful impact in our community. And I started using the term, interestingly enough, women of color only after I moved here. Like back in Singapore, I never really saw myself as a woman of color, maybe because, it's an Asian country. So it's very interesting. But yeah, I mean, when you're in a country that's predominantly Anglo-Saxon, white majority, you start identifying yourself as a woman of color a little bit more. And of course, I started connecting with a lot of like-minded women like yourself as well. And it's been an amazing journey so far. So right now I'm in the midst of building up my career coaching business. And it's really going to be targeting mainly mid to senior level women of color professionals globally. So not just restricted only to Australia. So yeah, it's something very exciting in on that front, and I'm totally looking forward to building it and sharing more details. Yeah.
That's lovely. And I think it's really good because I think you found like a niche market for yourself. And if I have to add on that, right, like even like for women of color, because we are traditionally a little bit more, I think we come from a very traditional context, like culture wise. So even if we are very career focused, we are very driven, there's also a lot of us who are homemakers and who are also like, we try to balance it with the family. I think I see that more. I would say, I mean, I could be wrong, but I tend to see a lot more women of color who are more family oriented. I think a lot of them do take sabbaticals and all that, to take time with their family or their children before they go back to their workforce. And what you're doing out there is actually giving them a bridge, creating that bridge for them to, to be able to seamlessly move into a new transition in their life.
Yeah, that's true. And I would say that it is definitely a challenge for women of color, to move back after a sabbatical or after a long extended maternity break. But having said that, it is not impossible. Because I've actually seen, like over here, I mean, in Australia and even in Singapore as well, we are seeing a lot of increase in female entrepreneurs who are coming in from, an Asian background or a women of color background. So it can be done. I think it's more to do with internal as well. Certain limiting beliefs that they might have in themselves, which is holding them back. So I think that would be something that they probably need to look into as well. Because ultimately it's about deciding what you want and going out for that, regardless of your current situation. But everyone's situation is different though. Sometimes if you have to do certain things to take time for yourself, if you're going through a personal trauma or whatever, and you need time to heal, do that. There's nothing right or wrong about it. Yeah.
And what sparked your interest in this area? Was it a personal encounter?
Yeah, so I think for me, during my recruitment days, I have actually come across various professionals, various candidates, who are highly talented and capable. And I didn't really get the opportunity to see a lot of Asian women, or even to be more specific, being an Indian person myself, Singaporean-Indian, I didn't really see a lot of women coming in from our background, and being at the senior most position. So it's actually quite almost like a rarity. I'm not trying to say it's impossible. It is definitely possible, but it's just that, at a certain level, there's almost like that invisible glass ceiling that actually, sets in. And as a recruiter, I didn't really see a lot of professionals doing that. And the few professionals that, of course, I talked, some of the candidates that I spoke with, I could see that some of them were returning back from a very long maternity break, and they were actually feeling so guilty about it. And they would, keep like, they were actually highly talented and confident. But when it came to projecting themselves, when it came to starting things all over again, they were at a loss. And that's when I knew that at one point in time in my life, I have to do something regarding that. So I think that's probably what sparked my interest. Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you decided to do that, because I have heard that from myself. I think in my mid-career and all that, before you were even promoted, right? They will ask you questions if you're a woman, like, so what are your plans? Are you planning to get settled down? Do you plan to have kids? Because at the back of their mind is they always have this thought that if you have a family, you might not be able to devote your time to your career. But the thing is, right, I think your career is not about the number of hours that you put in. It's really about your passion. If I am passionate about doing something, I will really know how to balance my time, and I will do it because I enjoy doing it. I think that's what inspires us to go to work or even to do something. And it will be easier for us to receive that if the company that we are in, they have that support for us.
That's true.
So a lot of times, I think a lot of people are hesitant to even talk about this or even go on a break that they so much need, is because they are afraid that they might lose out on a promotion or something that they've worked so hard for. So jumping back to this women, right? How do you think they should approach going back to the workforce? How do they mentally prepare for it?
Yeah. So what I feel is important is that it's about what I call, the self-narrative, the kind of narratives, the kind of stories that we tell ourselves. It's almost like, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So if you keep telling yourself that I can't do this because blah, blah, I can't, work on this, or I can't achieve certain things because I'm a working mom, and et cetera, et cetera. So you're already almost like signaling to your brain that you're only capable of doing certain things. So to me personally, on a personal note, family is of course very important to me. But having said that, I think, end of the day, for a woman who is trying to return back to the workforce, it's also about how she brands herself, So she probably has a certain level of experience, and she has accumulated a certain number of years in the workforce. And she's now currently attending to a baby, or she's just taking an extended maternity break to be with the family, which is fantastic. And but end of the day, she also knows at the back of her mind that she wants to return back to the workforce, and it's always there lurking at the back of her mind. So instead of just labeling yourself as the return to work mom, I mean, maybe you can even use terms like a data science expert, for example, or some business analyst, or I'm an entrepreneur in the making, something like that. I mean, I'm just giving random examples, but my point is, you don't have to be putting yourself in a box that says that I'm labeled as a return to work mom or something like that. I think you're way more than labels. So you can be a return to work mother, but you can also be someone who is a subject matter expert at what you're doing. And I think when you brand yourself, position yourself correctly, then you can also be expanding your networks. So while you're still looking for a job, you can also be connecting and expanding your networks with the right people. And so that ultimately, when you do make that transition back, it's a little bit smoother for you. So that's what I mean by, not placing yourself in a certain box and pigeonholing yourself. So I feel that could actually help. Yeah.
I think you have explained it very well, and I certainly agree with you, because I think before the labels are put on us, right, we have to change the narrative that's in us, because a lot of times, right, we are deemed as what we see ourselves. If I see myself as coming back, that label that I put in myself, right? It's just it kind of also attracts people to do the same way. And if I see myself as someone different, like what you say, like a subject expert, in this area, or I have a 10 years of project management experience, why not put that out there? Why not brand
Yeah.
yourself, there? Because that is the main attraction. The attraction is not the fact that you took a break to actually take care of your child at home. And I
Yeah.
love the fact that this COVID situation, right, has actually helped a lot of people in this way, because now we know for a fact that companies have to change their view of how they see, how work can be done remotely as well. So now if you do have a father, let's not talk about mother, let's talk about a father who's a director, for example, in a company, who has to work from home and who has children there. It can be done. It really can be done. They can have that time with the family and can
Yeah.
set the time. So it's also going to change ways of how things are
Yeah.
to be done, and
Absolutely.
how it can be effective. It can be,
Yeah.
they can no longer use the same excuse again. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. COVID and all that.
with the COVID, right? And do you feel right now, right, with this situation and how it's being shifted and all that, um, and branding is great. We have this great idea that branding, but as recruiters, we ourselves will tell candidates this: if you have been out of a job for a very long time, or if you're coming back after a break, don't pitch yourself too high. We've been told to do that, like, keep your
Yeah.
salary expectations low. Even though you are qualified to earn high, don't ask high, because of this factor that you've been out of the industry for some
Mhm.
time. Do you think that's a fair statement, or do you think that they should ask for what they are rightly entitled to?
Yeah, so I think this actually reminds me of the book that I read by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In. So in Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg is actually as you know, she's the chief operating officer, COO of Facebook. And
Mm-hmm.
so what happens was that in one of her chapters, she actually talks about how she was headhunted directly by Mark Zuckerberg himself. And so Mark actually invited her for a dinner, and he explained that he's very interested in hiring her. And he actually offers her the role, and she's actually thinking of taking it up, and she discusses with her husband, and she's saying that the role looks pretty good, and it's really what I want. And she talks about the offer, and she says that the offer seems pretty good as well, and I want to take it up. Then the husband actually shoots her a question: why do you accept the very first offer that's laid out to you? And her brother-in-law, I think, actually interjects by saying that, why do you have to, be accepting at a much lower level than what a man can do, So that actually sparks her to, ask for a higher offer. And she actually makes a higher offer, and she gets it. So this is,
Wow.
in a summary, I think this is what negotiation is all about. But very often, we women, we tend to push back a little bit on negotiating a little bit more, because we are so afraid, that we might be perceived to be very difficult, bossy, and it might come across as being, are we like challenging the status quo kind of thing. So I think, based on my opinion, I feel that it depends on what the person has actually experience in their career, and how much of a level of seniority or experience that next role offers them. Because obviously, I mean, we know, right? I mean, there is a certain hiring budget for every position. So it's not so much about valuing yourself, but I think it's about realizing your worth, and being fair to yourself. That's the way I look at it. Because if you're going to be having a small pay cut of, say, $500 or $1,000 from what you used to earn before, it starts with that. And then the very next thing would be like, you'll be denying yourself of a promotion and everything, thinking that maybe you're only fit for this. So again, I think, looking back, I feel that it really depends on the kind of background that the person is coming in from, and what they are actually looking at for themselves. I would say that for women, it's so important to actually exercise our confidence at the right time as well. It's not about being difficult, it's about understanding your worth and acting on it. And that means that you are also choosing a role that would sit in very well with your seniority. I mean, if you have been in a C-suite position, you wouldn't be applying for a manager role. So
Yeah,
that's
agree.
really too off, right? So that's what I mean. Be fair to yourself.
Wow. It's so true. I really agree with you in that, right? Like, how do you think this can be effectively communicated to employers out there? Is it based on achievements? Is it based on like referrals? I think it's I think easier for us to ask that we have this because of our experience, but sometimes I think it's lost when people fail to communicate effectively
Yep, that
to
is true.
prospective employers, like why are they valued at this amount of money. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it also depends on the employer itself. I mean, are they prepared to pay that high for that role in the first place? Or, how much do they even value the person? And it tells, I think, the prospective person something. I mean, if you're going to be working for someone who doesn't really value your worth as a professional, as a contributor to the organization, then I think there are bigger questions down the line as well. So would you be, denied a promotion or other opportunities simply because, your value is not even seen by a
Mm.
prospective employer? So communication is one thing, but I always believe that every candidate, right, I mean, has got a certain choice as well when it comes to going for interviews and assessing, the prospective employer. So end of the day, I think it's also about understanding that. And I think for employers, it's also about understanding that if you want to hire the best talent out there, then you also need to be, prepared to have that open, honest conversation. And until that happens, then I don't think it would be appropriate for you to be hiring the top of the top, but you're still not willing to, recognize that.
and and that's so true, and I think now that they know, right, what they can be do, I think I just want to go back to the first topic that we talked the first question that we talked about is as in personal branding. I think personal branding on your own might not be very easy to do because you know you're out of touch, and then you really do not know what's happening in the world, especially if you are like away from the industry for about a year or so, especially in the financial services sector, things can change so much. Even in technology space, things change so rapidly. So, in terms of that, right, how do you think a community will help them with their personal branding?
Community, as in terms of their own like networks or
Their own networks, yeah.
networks. Okay. Yeah. So I think, let's say if someone is on an extended break, for whatever the reason is, for up to a year, that's absolutely fine. I mean, every one of us, we have certain, personal things to attend to in life. Life happens, and that's okay. But I think end of the day, during this 1 year period, it's also about having a game plan as well. Like, it's okay to take a break, but on the professional side, can I upskill? Can I up level myself? What are the ways that I can actually do to learn something new, which is related to my industry? And how can I do that? By talking to people who are in that industry. So after a year, am I looking for a career transition to a different industry that I've never worked before? So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Okay, so I recognize there is going to be a challenge. What can I do to get past this challenge? So I have to talk to people from that industry that I'm interested in working in. And then you attend maybe networking events, or you talk to a friend or ex-colleagues, managers, So slowly you start building up. But you also realize that it's going to take a lot of time, and it's not overnight. But during that 1 year, because of your consistent efforts at networking and building up your profile on LinkedIn or whatever the platforms you're using, but obviously LinkedIn for professional networking, slowly you get the hang of it. And I feel it gives a lot more confidence as well, because you're actively doing something, even though you may not be employed, but at least you're keeping yourself in touch you have not lost it in touch. And I think that's so important. I mean, these days there are so many courses and activities online, so there's no excuse for not learning, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also very important for them, as in for their own self-esteem, because as they learn, as they touch base, and as they feel like they are being connected back again, so that actually gives them the confidence that they need when they are being put into in front of prospective hirers. Then they really know how to say, because they are building it up. And like what you've pointed out, right, it doesn't happen overnight. So if just say someone's desire is to go back to the workforce maybe 6 or 7 months down the road, that's what they are planning in, they should start a game plan. They should start having like proper vision setting on what they want to establish, what they want to
Yeah.
look towards, what are the goals that they are what is their goals, and how they're going to work towards their goals. So you have a proper game plan in mind, so which is so
Exactly.
great. Yeah. And what inspires you, Ramya, to keep doing this? I mean, is there a quote that motivates you?
Yeah. I guess I found this on Becoming from Michelle Obama. So that really inspires me. So Michelle Obama talked. Yeah. So even when it's not pretty or perfect, even when it's more real than you want it to be, your story is what you have, what you will always have. It is something to own. And it's such a beautiful quote, because you don't have to listen to other people's stories, or you don't know, I mean, you don't always have to be owning other people's stories. We have our own stories, and it's authentically ours, it's uniquely ours, and it's what makes us. And every story has got a beautiful, parts to it, and the ugly parts to it. It's not perfect, so what? It's okay, it's your story, own it. So I think that's something that just keeps me going. Yeah.
So true. And that's so good, actually, so powerful to know that. I mean, I think a lot of times, right, we always feel that only our achievements or accolades speak for ourselves, but there's so many interesting stories about us, stories that that how it can help us relationally, how it can help
Yeah.
us to be good effective communicators, how it can also help us, like, to do so many things. Like, I think it's really about the way we brand ourselves. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday who was actually an intern, and we're talking about personal branding for himself without any experience. And I actually pointed out the skill sets that he can use from his
Yep.
CCA projects, because you are talking about not only a CCA project, you're talking about
Mm.
managing timelines, you're talking about project
Yep.
management skills. So there's so many things that you can pull out from your daily life, the skill sets that can be necessary. It's all about just rebranding, and how do you tell that story in a
Yep.
way that is applicable and
Nicely.
valuable to to a company or potential
Mm.
hirer. So yes, I just really love this, and I think it's going to be so encouraging to women out there who are actually
Yeah.
on breaks right now, thinking about their next career move. I think it's going to inspire them.
Yeah.
So as we are coming to the end of this section, right, do you have any key takeaways or tips that you would like to share with them?
Yep. So I think for me in my life, I would say that my key takeaways have always been the fact that I feel that these days, an empowered woman is described to be, okay, bossy babe, or a boss girl, all those taglines and hashtags, which is great. But my point is, I think being an empowered woman is not just about having a bunch of cheerleaders and cheering you on, and when something nice happens to someone else, you don't do the same as well. So it's I think end of the day, it's about supporting each other. And an empowered woman is actually someone who is so self-assured and self-confident that even if someone, like, does better than her, she's the first person to acknowledge that, and credit that person, and just support them. And I feel that that's what being empowered is all about. It's about using your voice, not to shout. It's not about having the loudest voice, but it's about using your voice for a good cause. It's about lending your voice for causes that matter, and just supporting and helping each other out and uplifting each other. So that's one. And secondly, I feel that whatever you do, be honest to yourself, honest to everyone else. I know it sounds pretty basic, but to me, I feel that it's very important. I mean, whether I've been in a corporate role or right now I'm in, building up my entrepreneurial journey. So I think it's about being authentically yours. You don't try too hard to be someone else. And lastly, I feel that there's a lot of inner strength that comes from being kind. So never discount kindness, you know. So
Wow.
just because someone is kind doesn't mean that they're a weak person. A lot of good things can actually come out from being kind to one another. And I think the world needs that right now, based on what's happening recently. So yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with you, and I just love how you shared that. Is you're not, and I think that's what is empowerment really about, right? Is being so secure in yourself and in your own identity that you don't think about reaching out and helping someone else. Because sometimes there are people who don't share connections because they feel like, I don't want someone else to mooch out of it. I've heard people who tell me like, I worked for this connection, so I'm not going to give it to you for free. But
Mm,
that shows how insecure you are as a
yeah.
person,
Yeah.
because if you are secure and you know how hard it is to get there, right, you don't mind doing the same for another person, and that is
Yeah.
being kind. And that's, and because when you do that, you're actually kind of like sowing seeds in a way, because as
Yeah.
you do that, it will return back to you. Nothing goes
Yeah.
wasted, I
Exactly.
believe that. And
Yeah.
also being so true and authentic to yourself, because we don't really need to be a people pleaser and try to act in a way that people will accept us, but just
Yeah.
by showing your natural self, and this is who I am, this is what I stand for. And then I think we have that voice already, and it's easier to talk and communicate what we are, and
Yeah.
express all these ideas and thoughts, because it's really ourself, our true self. And it only kind of gets a bit out of sync, I think, when people try to you know be someone else and say
Yeah.
something else, because it's not you,
Thank you.
it's really not you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just really loved what you've shared so far. I mean, I have been so encouraged. I really like the ideas. I really like the fact that you're so authentic, and you're so open to sharing. And I believe that the women that's going to come under your wing, under your coaching, are going to be so empowered, because they are going to not only meet someone who's superficial, they're going to meet someone who is going to be there for them to walk that journey and empower them.
Thank you so much for the lovely, kind words, Shivon. I totally appreciate it. Yeah, I think the pleasure is all mine. Just sitting down and talking to such an amazing, kind-hearted person like yourself. And I could say the same as well. I think we are doing this for a reason. And, it's for a positive impact. And we have got our purpose as well. So, yeah, I'm just so happy to partner with you on this. And yeah, it's truly an amazing moment. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity as well.
So thanks so much for being on the show. And once again, I just want to thank the viewers who are watching this. Do feel free to share your comments, and we will also post Ramya's links on the social media platforms that we have available, so that you can get access to her, and you can also ask her questions along this line, especially if you're in a transition period of going back to work. And I do hope that you continue to like, subscribe, and share these videos, right, to really women out there who you want to empower, who you want to lift up. And it's really important that we just stand together, as women, and not keep our knowledge to ourselves, but really impart to other women, and also young women out there, so that they'll be confident. They also shine in wherever they are called for.